What is a song by a band or artist you love that you didn't really appreciate until you heard it done by someone else? For me, the most glaring example that I can think of is Blow Up the Outside World, originally done by Soundgarden off of their last album before breaking up in 1997. The album is Down on the Upside. That is my second favorite Soundgarden album. I love it. But that song never really did much or even registered with me until the day that the news broke that Soundgarden frontman, the late Soundgarden frontman Chris Cornell, took his own life on May 18th, 2017. Within a few hours of that news breaking, if my calculations are correct, in Perth, Australia, at the Astor Theatre, Living Colour played a show, and as a tribute to Cornell, they played that song. And the emotion that comes across in that performance. Living Colour frontman Corey Glover, you can feel the emotion, especially when he goes into the chorus, and the emotion in the crowd. I'm getting choked up even thinking about it. I get choked up about this performance more than I did about Chris Cornell's actual passing, and he's one of my favorite artists of all time. But there's just something about the feeling in that room. There are two clips that I know of on YouTube. One is on a channel named at the Yedida, and the other one is at Sneaker Freak. And I can't tell whether those are the same footage and one of them is just zoomed in or whether they are actually two distinct clips because they both start at the same exact point. Either way, whoever filmed that clip originally, thank you. Thank you, thank you. I am so happy you filmed that and posted it because now, after hearing it through Living Colour's emotional rendition, now I love the song. I should say for context, Vernon Reid at least has always said that the band itself was traumatized, was the word he used, by the death of Kurt Cobain in 1994. And you can see him at the end of this performance in 2017 saying, "I can't think of any place I'd rather be than here after something so fucked up."
There's no place I would rather be on a night like this after something so fucked up. This is the place to be. Thank you very much.
So this is a guy, and presumably a band, who are really sensitive to these kinds of things, and it just knocks me out. It didn't restore my love for the song, it completely gave me my love for a song that I was almost completely indifferent to prior to that. So thank you to Living Colour, and thank you to the people or the person who filmed this and posted it. If you haven't checked that out, I would highly, highly recommend it. Interestingly enough, the opposite of what U2 said about Helter Skelter, this is a song Charles Manson stole from the Beatles, we're stealing it back. This is a song that I had never owned in my heart, and Living Colour was like, we're giving it back to you in this totally new, awesome way. I don't typically get too emotional when celebrities pass away. Almost never. I almost never cry about it. I actually don't cry much when the people I know pass away either. That a little bit more so, and I really haven't gone through people who are super, super, super close to me, who have died, thank goodness, knock wood, prematurely or anything like that. My parents are still alive, thank goodness. There have been relatives of mine who I was very, very close to, but they were well up in age, and in one case it was very expected, and it had been building up for years. But I've always been skeptical and actually come down pretty hard at times on people getting very, very emotional when the famous people we love, or actors or musicians whose work we love, pass away, and it's like, well, you love the work, you don't really own the person, you're not as close to them as you should be to be having that kind of reaction. And look, their work is still here. In Chris Cornell's case, it was a little bit different. I didn't cry on hearing the news. Speaking of U2, the moment I did cry, the first time after Chris Cornell's death, there was a U2 show. I believe it was at the Rose Bowl. I can't remember where. Some outdoor venue. I believe it was in California. I should have looked it up. And they played all of Black Hole Sun, the Soundgarden's probably biggest hit, over the PA before they came on. And that's when I burst into tears. And it wasn't so much even from the loss of him. It was the fact that here's a song that, I had been familiar with at that point for like, geez, what are we talking, like 20 plus years at that point? It would be 30 now, but in 2017 it was over 20 years. A song that's just a staple of my life, and anybody really who grew up in that generation listening, even being aware of alternative music, quote unquote, or mainstream commercial rock. And I was like, man, this guy was suffering a lot more than we knew, a lot more. And that song is quite moving. I consider it very moving. I feel a lot when I hear that song, but it's like, there's a lot more there than any of us probably knew, because this guy, he made a lot of references to hanging himself. There's a song, Pretty Noose, which is actually not literally about hanging oneself. It's, to quote Cornell from an old interview, it's about the appeal of a beautifully packaged bad idea, that you end up hanging yourself. It becomes a noose. But then there's the video, I forgot the name of the song, on his final solo record, where, it's like a Western and he's about to be hanged. I remember years and years ago, after Kurt Cobain's death, he said, you never know about somebody. There's a quote from some interview he did way back then. And, one thing you see them and they're doing fine, then the next thing they're hanging from a rope. And so the fact that this image kept resurfacing, and the way Cornell died, it's just like, wow. Again, he always seemed very put together. It seemed, he had been very upfront about his history with depression. He talked about not leaving the house for over a year when he was an adolescent, and all he did was listen to the Beatles for that entire time. So this is somebody who was very, very, very marked by depressive makeup, but again seemed very functional, incredible work ethic, and certainly by that point in his life seemed like he had really come through whatever that was. And yet there we were. And so when U2 played Black Hole Sun, that's when my emotions surfaced. I did also cry after the fact when Scott Weiland, Stone Temple Pilots frontman, passed away. Because I felt the rush of all that music and creativity and art. There's a part of me, I guess, that clearly goes into a shutdown mode when I hear about someone dying. Like I said, some of my favorite relatives, even though it was somewhat expected, I didn't have an immediate reaction at all. I remember one time when I was I even a preteen at this point? At the oldest, maybe 13, 14, middle teens. I could have even been a little bit younger. And my mom thought that something had happened to my brother. And I just remember turning kind of to stone. And she was like, wow, you didn't show any feeling or anything. And it just like my feelings just got suspended. And I suspect that's part of what's happening here. But I also do feel like we don't personally connect with these people who make this work that we love. We're not in a relationship with them the way it may appear or the way our feelings kind of want to be. So when they pass away, I feel like I'm almost taking something that isn't mine, or I do feel that way. I feel like it's like I'm intruding on a space where only their family and loved ones and friends have a right to claim. And I just don't feel all that much, even when I love them. Interestingly enough, I got to give a shout out to my friend, longtime friend and friend of the channel, Weezer Steve, who's helped a ton with lots of different stuff, including some stuff with this channel as well. after David Bowie passed away, I posted something on Facebook that was not delicate at all. It was very, I was like, he's not your fucking grandfather. And it was annoying to see all these tributes. Actually, I don't remember if it was David Bowie, because that was in like 2013 or so. There was somebody that died a year before Chris Cornell, and I was like, give me a break. I kind of pulled out the same sort of tired greatest hit from my repertoire and said a similar kind of thing on Facebook, like, give me a break, people. And my friend Steve was like, I wonder what you're going to say when it's somebody who you really do love, whose work means everything to you. And then within a year of that, Chris Cornell died, and it was like, yeah, thanks, Steve. But, he didn't gloat, to his credit. He understood. But, even then I wasn't overcome with emotion, and don't feel that way even now. It's hard to explain, but I see a separation between the work and the person. I guess I don't like to give in to the idea that we own these people somehow, that they make something that is so meaningful to us, that gets into our spirit and lives there in such a profound way, that the music is like a friend that's with you the rest of your whole life from the time you hear this stuff. That's how I feel about the album Bad Motorfinger and several other Soundgarden songs. But that album in particular, it's like a relationship I have with that album. And part of me just is very cautious about overstepping what I feel is something that is more of a fantasy. So much of the time I don't respond, especially when someone is up there in age, and when, like in David Bowie's case, I'm not a huge David Bowie fan, but it's like he released an album a week before he died or something, and he lived until late 70s. I consider that a great life. I feel happy that the person lived that long and made it that far. I realize I'm being somewhat obtuse, and I no longer get in people's faces about it and tell them that their feelings are wrong. Another really close friend of mine and friend of the channel named Mike, who I've mentioned a lot in different videos, he said, well, he sent me a note after one of these times I went off. He's like, what people are feeling is genuine grief. You know that. And I feel like there's a really much more obvious kind of aspect to this, where it's like, well, look, can't people just be sad that someone's not in the world anymore, that we're not going to have them in our world anymore? And even if you don't feel that for you, can't we just be sad that someone has departed? And I totally see that. But when someone dies prematurely, I do feel like, man, that's unfortunate. That's a loss. That's really, it's too bad they didn't get to go all the way with their lives. Not so much when they're super old. So like when Prince died, I felt like that was premature, and it's like, oh my God, all that work, all that creativity, all of that he could have just kept going with. That's a little selfish, I think. It's like, there's more to the person than just the work and their output. But these are people who've dedicated their lives to creating, and would, I'm sure, all of them choose to go as far as possible and create as much as possible and leave behind as much of a legacy as possible. I, on one hand, feel like part of me is just kind of closed off to allowing myself to feel this feeling. On the other hand, I do feel like, I kind of know better. I'm not falling for this like illusion of being all sad. I remember when Robin Williams died, another really good friend of mine was like, oh, that's sad. And I was just like, I love Robin Williams, is in one of my all-time favorite movies. He's one of the leads in a film named The Fisher King. And I absolutely love that film. Again, it's one of those things that lives in my soul, kind of, lives in my heart. That performance of his is very much something I've taken to heart for 35 years since seeing that film. But again, didn't feel much of anything. And my other friend, Kristen, was like, geez, that's a little colder. She was like, you're kind of being a dick, because I was like poo-pooing, like, what exactly are you sad about? You still have all that work. It didn't go anywhere. And I think there is on the one hand, I can see from other people's perspective, wow, you're being really detached. On the other hand, I think there is an important distinction to be made. And in this case, I feel it ultimately all landed in the right spot because it took U2 and Living Colour to reconnect me with my feelings towards this person's work and also what he must have been going through his whole life that I'm sure most of us had just become unaware of or taken for granted that it wasn't a thing anymore. So that's my take. What are some songs that for you didn't work or do much for you until you heard them done by someone else? Let me know in the comments. I'm really curious about your reactions to some of the artists you love after they've died. Let me know in the comments. And please do hit the like, subscribe, and notification button so you never miss a post. I've got plenty of Soundgarden and Living Colour and U2 content in the pipeline that you won't want to miss. For Feedback Def, I'm Sabby Reyes Kulkarni, the apostate music journalist. Over and out.